Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of show the app, show the architecture, and then show the code. And what I'm going to show you is how you can set up OAuth inside of a full stack application. Now, I don't mean OAuth in the sense of being able to sign in with an OAuth provider. What I mean is actually using their API, right? You're logged in with email and password, but you get to use Slack in this example. So let me go ahead and show you the application. Here's what we have here. And it's a simple React app, right? React and React router. But what we're effectively doing or wanting to do is send a message to a user, or rather to a Slack channel. So I'm going to go ahead and sign into the application right over here and put in my password. And you can see the very next thing is that it takes me to this slash secondary page. Now over here, it's, hey, if you don't have Slack access, then you need to go to this settings and you need to authorize Slack, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Click on authorize. And note, if you're like, hey, why isn't there a loading indicator? I didn't put it in. Okay, that's why. And then we can come over here and you can allow, it'll show you what you can do on your behalf. Simply send messages because those are the scopes that we are requesting. Now we can allow this Slack app to post on our behalf, and it's going to load in our channels and it's going to load in a simple input where we can type in whatever it is that we want to type in. I have a Focus Outer Slack channel that I use just for testing. And let's say like we want to go to our general Slack, right? I can say, hey, everyone in general, right? And then we can click on send. Notice the asterisk about no loading indicators, but we can effectively talk to our Slack channel on our behalf. This is me. It's saying Focus Outer. It is not saying like bot user or anything like that. Pretty cool. Let's get rid of this. And note that there are two Slack calls being made, right? One for the channels, right? We get the channel right here. And then the other one for the actual text we want to be able to send. Now, as you can expect, whoops, didn't mean to do that. As you can expect, over in settings, we can come over here, we can disconnect Slack, and then it'll disconnect it and clear those credentials. What does this look like from an architectural perspective? Simple enough. We are going to, as you saw, have a user come into our app. A Lambda function is going to fire where they can have a user stored in our database for easy lookups. And then we want to hit up our API where we want to authorize Slack. This API needs the ID of the user that we just stored. And when we click on this Lambda function, we can effectively create a state, right? State is to make sure that along the way throughout this OAuth process, nothing has been tampered with. So we are going to create a random ID, append on the user ID, and append the provider. And from there, we have a very simple way of storing state inside of another Dynamo table. And we can set a TTL on the database so that it expires after a certain amount of time. You can use Redis, you can use Memento. I'm using DynamoDB because it's easy. From here, now we have the authorization URL, right? We're going to take this URL. It's going to be given to us and we can send our user over to Slack. Once we have that, we can respond with a code. And the cool thing is like Slack isn't going to redirect to our front end. Slack is going to redirect to this Lambda function URL, right? So it's the endpoint and then like question mark code equals whatever. We take that code. We need to make sure that the state in the code that we get from Slack match what was in our database, right? We have to make sure that it hasn't been tampered with along the way. We parse it out and we effectively say, okay, if things look good, then we can exchange the tokens. And we can take those tokens, store it back on the user object. So then our app has access and we're going to redirect the user to our front end application. That's typical OAuth flow. Once you have it set up, it's not that bad. Let me just show you the code really quick. So what we have, let's just kind of make this simpler and let's go over to our main part of the application. And you can see like we have our routes set up. We have a home route, secondary, and settings. You've seen all of these. So we are going to now check out the post confirmation trigger. Super simple. It's like, hey, when you sign in, just create the user inside of the database. Awesome. Next thing, we have the, the user authorized callback. So inside of here, also very simple, we're effectively saying, I'm going to create that piece of state, random ID, colon, user ID provider, as I mentioned. We're going to create the TTL, which is also going to be when this item expires out of DynamoDB. Okay. And we know that it expires because I wrote the code and I set it to, which was also super easy thanks to Amplify and its easy ability to set up fields by dropping down to the CDK. Not too bad. Next up, we also have the ability to have that callback. So this is going to be Slack responding to our request. And then we have to take that code and effectively parse it out. Now I have a little helper inside of here, and the helper is saying, we need to grab the query parameters, which is going to be the code and the state. Again, Slack gives us this. We're going to parse out the user ID and the provider, right? I know it's going to be these items because I wrote the code. And then we can go ahead and grab that user from DynamoDB. And because we want to potentially have multiple providers in the future, then we can set this filter to be on here so that we can grab those people. But let's say the TTL is for 5 minutes, somebody authorizes from Slack, then they go ahead and they disconnect and then they authorize all within 5 minutes, right? Maybe something went wrong. So if there are multiple Slack codes inside of our database, just grab the latest one because that's obviously the one that they want to be using. If everything is equal, then, or not equal, then say, hey, go back to your application with an invalid state error. Otherwise, now we can exchange the code for actual tokens. So we pass in the required things that we need. And I have that helper function down here. We're effectively just generating a URL, right? It's, hey, what was the endpoint that you needed? That's going to be this right here for Slack. And then we're going to pass in the form encoded params. Nothing too crazy. And then once we have those tokens, then we need to go ahead and store them on the user inside of our database, right? Disconnecting is equally as simple. We're really just going to call like this function, which is like revoke the OAuth token, which is this right here, right? Now, the one trick is what happens though when that access token expires? How are we refreshing that? What I'm doing is that on every API call, let's just say we have something like this send Slack message. What I'm going to do is say, hey, effectively, if you sent me your access token and that time hasn't expired yet, where do I have that? Yeah, if you sent me, based off of the user that you're pulling in, if you send me the access token and it hasn't expired yet, then I'm going to return the access token and you can go back to doing whatever it is you're trying to do. In this case, send a Slack message. Otherwise, I need to use the refresh token that I'm also storing on the user, and I'm going to call the endpoint, whichever endpoint it is for the provider, in this case, it's this one, to now refresh your access token. Once I get those credentials, I store them inside of our database, just like this, and then I can go ahead and make the call, which is what I'm doing down here. So here's the helper function. I get the access token, whether it's the old one or the new one, and then I call the actual endpoint. I can't do this on the front end because Slack and cores aren't playing together nicely, but it's fine because this is actually what you want to do on the server side anyways, because that access token might be expired, even though Slack is 12 hours. And then from there, right, if everything was successful, then success equals true. Whew. I feel like that was a lot. I feel like I was talking fast, but that is effectively the end-to-end flow on how you want to set up OAuth inside of a full stack cloud application, in this case using Amplify Gen 2. Not that bad, and once you have that in place, it's super easy to support other providers in the future because they all follow the same schema, right? It's the OAuth spec. So you can assume certain things to be there. But that's all I have in this video, super quick. As always, my name is Michael Leando, aka Focus Otter, and until then, go and build something great. Peace.